Hello and welcome back to AP Psychology. I'm Miss Lee and we're still in Unit 9, Social Psychology. In this video, we'll be covering prosocial relations. By the end of this unit, you should be able to predict the impact of the presence of others on individual behavior. And this is going to include concepts such as the bystander effect, the diffusion of responsibility, in-group, out-group bias, reciprocity norms, subordinate goals, and you should be able to describe the variables that contribute to altruism and aggression. You should be able to describe the variables that contribute to attraction. If you haven't done so already, go ahead and grab your notes and let's get started. All right, first let's talk about what altruism even is. The definition of altruism is the unselfish regard for the welfare of others. And so this is an attitude, it is a belief, and it's going to affect your behavior potentially. When you think of random acts of kindness without any kind of expectation of retribution, then that's basically altruism, when you give without expecting anything in return. That's what we're talking about when we're talking about altruism. It's doing good for the sake of doing good. There are some influences on altruistic behavior, primarily the social exchange theory. This is the decision to help another person that's based on how much it will cost the person to help compared to how much it will help the person being helped. In other words, it's a risk to reward ratio. How much are you going to give in order to truly be of benefit? The reciprocity norm states that there is an expectation that we should return help, not harm, to those who have helped us. And then there's a social responsibility norm. This is largely learned. This is not something that we're just born with. It's a norm that tells us to help others when they need us, even though they may not repay us in kind. Again, this is not something that we're just born with. It's not an innate reflex or anything like that. This is something that we typically learn from some other external environmental source. Influence in the social exchange theory. There are several of them. Let's go through them one at a time. First, there's a clarity for need of help. The more obvious it is that there is a need for help, the more likely help will be given. And this is most of the time, not always. But if you see a serious car accident, you are much more likely to offer assistance than if you just see like a fender bender. Basically, it's that idea, well, they've got this, they're okay. There is a specific case that we will also talk about in class. The victim in this case is Kitty Genovese, very famous case. And she basically was on her way home from a very late shift. She was a manager at a bar and she was walking from her car to her apartment. She was in the parking lot and she was attacked. The attack lasted approximately 32 minutes. And during this attack, she was stabbed 17 times. The report states that 38 people heard or actually observed some part of this fatal assault. The report also states that at one point, a neighbor called out and yelled for whatever was going on to cut it out. The report continues to go on and state that the assailant actually ran off, but then came back. So Kitty Genovese tried to escape. She was able to pull herself into the downstairs part of her apartment building, and not one single neighbor actually offered assistance other than the one that was reported to yell down to knock it off. There's a really interesting article that you'll be provided in class that states that there were 37 people who saw the murder but didn't call the police. Kitty Genovese didn't die immediately. She potentially could have been helped, but because everyone stood back and did nothing, she did succumb to her wounds. This is where the term bystander effect really comes into play. This is when the concept kind of entered into mainstream and was really seriously looked at. Other influences in the social exchange theory, the presence of others. There is this diffusion of responsibility, and what that means is if there are more people present, the responsibility for helping spreads amongst all that are present. This is what's going through people's minds as they're bystanders, which then causes the tendency that is the bystander effect. You basically assume that somebody else is going to take care of it. The bystander effect is the tendency where as the number of people present increases, the likelihood that even one person will help decreases. So this attack that I refer to, Kitty Genovese's attack, was in front of dozens of people and still no one helped. Personality of the helper plays into this social exchange theory as well. In particular, the mood of the person. There is a concept known as the feel good, do good phenomenon. This is the tendency of the person to be more helpful and altruistic to others when they're in a good mood. We talked about this very briefly in Unit 7. Other environmental factors include being in a small town or rural area. You're more likely to offer help when you're in a small town or a rural community. Not being in a rush or a hurry. If you're on your way to work, you're already running late, you're less likely to stop and help. When it's nice weather, people are more likely to help. And having just observed someone being helpful, you're more likely to be helpful yourself. Other theories include the empathy-altruism theory. And this is where people help just for the sake of helping. It is a completely altruistic reason. They're usually motivated by the desire to increase another person's well-being. And it depends on how much empathy you have for another person, basically. The evolutionary theory states that people help relatives because it increases the chances that the helper's genes will survive in the future. How this plays out is you're more likely to help people that you are related to than a stranger. So let's talk about the psychology of attraction. Environment plays a huge role in attraction and ultimate relationship building. The environment includes proximity. This is geographic nearness, and it's a powerful predictor of friendship and relationships overall. The closer you are to someone physically, the more likely you are to befriend them, to start a romantic relationship, whatever that means, you are more likely to have a relationship with someone that you're close to physically. And the mere exposure effect states that repeated exposure to novel stimuli increases one's liking of that item. And this works for anything, really. The more time you're exposed to a food that you're not sure of, as well as someone that you have just met. In other words, the more you're around someone new, the more you grow to like them. The actual circumstances under which people first meet also influence attraction. One's more likely to be attracted to a stranger you meet in comfortable rather than uncomfortable physical conditions, and attraction is more likely if you associate someone with something pleasant. Another factor in attraction is similarity. Having similar views between individuals causes the bond of attraction to strengthen. So if you believe the same things, you have the same goals in life, you have something pretty major in common, you are more likely to be attracted to that person, but it doesn't mean you have to be exactly the same. Just in big, important ways like religious views, political beliefs, and family values. Okay, so you're probably wondering, what about physical attractiveness? Does it really matter? Well, the short answer is yes, especially in the initial stages of the relationship. It is often what draws you to that person and encourages you to continue to seek out interactions with that person. The more times you see someone, the mere exposure effect is going to play in, and that cycle is continued as a result of these kind of co-mingling theories. The matching hypothesis states that people tend to date, marry, or form other committed relationships with those who are similar in physical attractiveness. Psychologists believe that it may really be more about compromise as to why we pair off with someone of equal attractiveness rather than preference. We're really attracted to those with the most physical appeal, but we don't want to be rejected by these people. That kind of makes sense. So when we're talking about attraction, you have to talk about intimate relationships. There are a couple of different types of love that we're going to talk about very briefly. There's passionate love. This is an aroused state of intense positive absorption in another, usually present at the beginning of a love relationship. So it's very passionate. It's all about the drama. This is the love you see in movies. And it usually occurs at the beginning of a relationship when you're all consumed with the thoughts of that person. Then there's compassionate love. This is deep, affectionate, intimate attachment marked by mutual concern for the welfare of another person. It's not as arousing as passionate love, but psychologically, you are more intimate with that person than if you were just in passionate love. It includes items like equity, when one receives what they give to the relationship, as well as self-disclosure, intimate details being revealed about one another and accepting of those intimate details. Compassionate love is basically what's left when the passion changes or dissipates. And then last but not least, we get to Sternberg's triangular theory of love. Basically, take a look at this, once again, familiar triangle. We like to use triangles in psychology. There is this ultimate love called consummate love. And this is where intimacy, passion, and commitment all converge into a relationship of the ideal state. So you have these different factors, and at each point of the triangle, you're talking about intimacy or liking someone, infatuation or being passionate with someone. And then there is this sense of an empty love, but there's a commitment. So between liking and empty love, there's this companionate love where there's intimacy and commitment, but not really a lot of passion. Between infatuation and empty love, you've got fatuous love. And this is where there's passion and commitment, but maybe not so much liking. And then there's romantic love, where you really like the other person and you are passionate with the person, you're intimate, but there's not really necessarily a huge commitment. Again, all three of these factors combined is what Sternberg referred to as consummate love. And that is it for prosocial relations. In our next video, we'll be talking about social and cultural impact on the self. I can't wait to see you then. Bye for now.